Good morning, Morai v'Rabotai, Beruchim Abayim. We are continuing on Masechet Rosh Hashanah, and we are on Daf Tet, Amud Bet, 11 lines from the bottom of the Amud. By 2 dots, today's Amud is being learned as a Zechut Rufa Shelema for Daniel, Moshe ben Farangis v'Avraham, Rachel, Simcha bat Nahid. Also being learned Leilu Nishmat, Betzalel ben Rafael v'Esther, and Esther bat Naftali Tzvi Levi. I want to share, before we start, a little piece of information that we have been really waiting to have the opportunity to share, but every day we kind of like ran out of time. We had a Braita that mentioned that Rosh Chodesh Nisan, aside from all the items that our Mishnah mentions, that's Rosh Hashanah leMelachim v'Largalim, the Mishnah counted a number of other things as well, and one of them was that Rosh Chodesh Nisan is Rosh Hashanah for Ibur Shana, right? That up until the end of Adar, you could be Ma'aber de Shana and say, okay, this year is going to be 2 Adars, because we find out that the season of spring, which is the Tkufot. The Tkufot are the seasons, basically. So Tkufat Nisan does not mean Chodesh Nisan, means the season of spring, which has to be starting always before Chag HaPesach. Tkufat Nisan has to start before Tetvav Be Nisan, because Lemoed Chag HaAviv has to be Pesach, and that means that the Torah is commanding us that Pesach could never start before the season of Nisan. So if you have years, lunar calendar, which the backbone of Jewish calendar is lunar calendar, and every year you're short 11 years from the solar calendar. So that's 11 days, yes, years. 11 days from short from the solar calendar. So you come out after every 3 years, basically. You're going to be way short. And then you're going to start Pesach before the season of spring. So you add 1 month of Adar, you buy yourself another month, and now for sure you're going to be in spring, and then you can celebrate Nisan. So that's the basic structure of how Ibur year works. And sometimes it could be tedious how to figure this out, not just every 3 years, because then you have 33 days, and that Shirayim also adds up in every few cycles, and so on, without getting into the details of complexities of this. But the Maaseh, sometimes they need time to do it. The last day is going to be Rosh Chodesh Nisan. So that's what we learned, right? And the 30th day of Adar, which is also Ra'ui to be Nisan, the Gemara Dashins that we're going to have this, that's already also considered part of Rosh Chodesh Nisan, that you cannot be Ma'aber de Shana. Okay? Now I want to share with you something very strange. In Tanakh, that when you learn it and you pay attention, you start really scratching your head, and then you find out that this is actually asked by none other than Reuben Margaliot, and this is, usually we know him as the Margalit Hayam on Shas, but this is in his Sefer on Chot Pesach on Siman Taf Chavtet. So it says the pasuk in let's work backwards. The Shulchan Aruch says at the beginning of the first Siman, in beginning of Chot Pesach Siman Taf Chavtet, that we don't say Mizmor LeTodah on Pesach. We don't say Mizmor LeTodah on Pesach. Why don't we say Mizmor LeTodah on Pesach? Because Mizmor LeTodah we say because of the Korban Todah that was brought, during the course of the year. Now on Pesach you cannot bring Korban Todah. Why can't you bring Korban Todah? Because Korban Todah, aside from the fact that was a lot of meat to be eaten in a very short time, right? We spoke about this before, how all the korbanot, normally speaking, have 2 days and 1 night, and Korban Todah only has leyom v'layla achad at chatzot, that day that you shechted, and until the midnight of that night. That's it. because HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to make sure that people are inviting all the neighborhood and then say, oh, wow, what's the party for? Korban Todah, I'm thanking HaKadosh Baruch Hu for the nest that happened, whatever the 4 reasons of the initiation of Korban Todah would have been. But aside from that, we have 40 loaves of bread that's brought with Korban Todah as well. 10 of which are chametz, 30 of them are matzot. So therefore, on Pesach, obviously you cannot bring Korban Todah because you would have to bring matzah, and you have Bal Yira'eh, Bal Matzah, you cannot bring it. Right? So simply put, you can't bring Korban Todah on Pesach.
You bring chametz.
Because you can't bring chametz. Right? And because you wouldn't bring in the time of Bet HaMikdash Korban Todah, we don't say Mizmor LeTodah. Okay? That's a simple, straightforward fact. So it says, Rav Reuben Margalit says, wait, you read Tanakh and you'll have a problem. You read Tanakh and you'll have a problem because in Divrei Yamim Bet, in Perek Chavtet Pasuk Lamed Aleph, there is discussing the beginning of the reign of Chizkiyahu HaMelech, who was a tremendous tzaddik, right? Chizkiyahu HaMelech was a son and the father of Reshaim, right? His father was Achaz, his son was Menashe, tremendously wicked people, right? Horrible Reshaim. Achaz, Chizkiyahu HaMelech, when he took the reign, one of the things that he did was Girer Atzmot Aviv. He disgraced the bones of his father, took them out of kever with a tremendous disgrace in order to create a certain level of atonement, of kapara for his father's, all the averot that his father did, and so on and so forth. Chizkiyahu was a tremendous person. Chizkiyahu HaMelech mandated the learning of Torah. He used all of the leverage of his power as a king to create system of education, and the Gemara says that Batku Midan Bar Be'esheva, they checked from one end of Eretz Yisrael to the other end of Eretz Yisrael, and they didn't find Tinok v'Tinoket, even little kids, that they were not proficient in the most complex halachot of Tumah v'Tahara. Can you imagine that? He enforced learning Torah and acquiring knowledge of all aspects of Torah for everyone in Klal Yisrael. It was tremendous, right? And he took reign right around Rosh Chodesh Nisan. But that's when he became a king. Now, the Pasuk there says that B'Chodesh HaRishon, right, which Chodesh Rishon is what? Usually? Nisan, right? They brought Korban Todah in 16th of the month. They brought. He says to them, go bring Korban Todah, be happy, blah, blah, blah. And the Pasuk says, they did what he said. They brought Korban Todah. Right? And it says, B'Chodesh HaSheni, they celebrated Pesach 7 days. So it says, Rabbi Reuben Margalit, so wait a second. 16th of Chodesh Rishon is 16th of Nisan. You can't bring Korban Todah on 16th of Nisan. It has to come with 10 loaves of chametz. How in the world did you read this pasuk? Last time you read Divrei Hayamim. And on top of that says Rabbi Reuben Margalit, the 15th of the second month, which is Iyar, they celebrated Pesach. So it says, I understand there's a concept of Pesach Sheni, but Pesach Sheni is the 14th of Iyar. That's it, 1 day. Pesach Sheni is not 7 days, it's 1 day. So what do you mean they celebrated Pesach for 7 days? So you really got to scratch your head on this. How did this work even? So it says, Rabbi Reuben Margalit, I'm encapsulating this. This is a beautiful and longer discussion, but he says a genius idea. Says Rabbi Reuben Margalit, the Gemara tells us that Chizkiyahu HaMelech did 6 controversial things, 3 of which was very much praised by Chachamim, and 3 of which was very much not praised by Chachamim. Lo hodulo. They didn't agree with him. So one of the things that the Gemara counts, shelo hodulo, that the Chazal were not happy with what he did, was he was iber Adar benisan. He was me'aber shana benisan. So says Rabbi Margalit, what does that mean exactly? What did he do? So it says, let me run you through some memory line of history of what happened with Chizkiah. Chizkiah was a melech tzaddik. He inherited a tremendously dismantled community from his father, Achaz the Rasha. Everyone was doing Avodah Zarah. The whole concept of Mu'adot and Tahara was completely taken away from this community. And he inherited this in Nisa, right before, and he wants to do Chag Pesach. And these people are not ready to be Matayar themselves for Pesach. And therefore, says Rabbi Margarit, what he did was, he was encouraging people should be in Korban Pesach, they should go through the process of Tahara and all of that, and people were not ready for it yet. So what he did was, he said, I'm going to buy myself one more month to push this concept before Pesach comes along. The only problem is, he was ma'abir the Shana on 30th day of Adar, which really, halachically, you're not supposed to, even though that's Adar, because it's Ra'ui to be Nisan, you're not allowed to be ma'abir the Chodesh. What happens if you do it, by the way? The halacha is, Atem afilu shogegim. We're going to have the drashot in the Gemara. Our sugi is upcoming. Atem afilu shogegim. Even residim. If the bedin, if the king were me'aber de shana, even afterwards, it's meubar. It's meuberet. If you do it in the 30th day of Adar, it works. He did the wrong thing, but it works. So since that's what he did in order to buy himself more time to push to make sure people bring Korban Pesach and to establish his foothold in Klal Yisrael, turning the tide on a community of Ovdei Avodah Zarah to push that they should be doing Korban Pesach with Tahara, with purification of their vessels and themselves and all that. And he did it. He actually pulled this off. Now, Chazal were not happy because he did something shelo kedin, lo hodu lo. So therefore, when the pasuk in Divrei Hayamim codifies this, it codifies it as though it had not happened. Really, in reality, this was supposed to be not Ishana Me'uberet, and therefore, when they brought Korban Todah, which was the 16th of what became Adar Sheni, the pasuk counts it as if this was Chodesh Rishon, which should have been, could have been Nisan, and they brought Korban Todah because it was not Nisan. In reality, what he did took hold, and therefore it was Adar Sheni. 16th of Adar Sheni is right after Purim. It's Chazak u'Baruch. Bring Korban Todah as much as we want. And therefore, when they are keeping actual Pesach in what was that year, Nisan, the pasuk counts it as Chodesh Sheni, as though it was Iyar. It says they kept Pesach 7 days, right? A genius insight into this whole concept. And again, this ties with the sugya with what we're going to have, the details of Ibur Shana and the details of when you can and when you can't. But we keep this in mind as we go through the sugyas, and a very interesting insight into Divrei Hayamim Bet. You could challenge people whenever you want to show off your Tanakh skills to people. Open up the Divrei Hayamim and say, how did you understand this in your last Gilgul when you read this? But that's nevertheless a beautiful insight from Rab Reuben Margaliot, V're'ui madvarim lemishamar. So now, with that being said, we are 11 lines up from the bottom of the Amud in Daf Tet Amud Bet in Masechet Rosh Hashanah. The Mishnah told us in Daf Bet that Rosh Chodesh Tishrei is a Rosh Hashanah for a bunch of things. Aside from being Yom Adin, what we call the Rosh Hashanah, but it also is Rosh Hashanah Leshanim, Leshemitin, Leyovelot, Leneti'ah, U'Liyerakot. So says our Gemara, when you say it's Rosh Hashanah for plantation, what does that mean? Lenetiah. Says the Gemara, Menalan. How do we know that Rosh Chodesh Tishrei is Rosh Hashanah for plantations? Tichtiv, as the pasuk says, shalosh shanim arelim. Says 3 years you should be orla when you plant something. It has to be 3 years. So the halacha is, when you plant something for 3 years, it is orla, you cannot benefit from it, you cannot eat the fruits. The 4th year is going to be netaravai. Netaravai means you can eat it, but it has to be eaten with kedusha. So basically it takes on all of the details of the halachot of maaser sheni. If you can't eat, if you can't take it to Yerushalayim, you could be podeh, you could transfer the kedusha and money, and then later on when you go to Yerushalayim, you buy with that money food and you eat it. So that becomes netaravai. And the 5th year, now it's mutar for you to use it as regular fruits, right? This is in Eretz Yisrael, in Chutz La'aretz, applicable even nowadays in Chutz La'aretz. So says the Gemara, regarding the orla, the pasuk tells us, shalosh shanim arelim, 3 years shanim. And this shanim we learned Begezra Shava from the shanim of Tishrei. It also says by Netarvai, the 4th year, Ubashana Haravi'it. So by both of these, by Orla and Netarvai, it says Shana. V'yalif Shana Shana Mitishrei. And we learn a Gezerah Shava, a comparison from the word Shana that's mentioned in Rosh Chodesh Tishrei, being Rosh Hashanah. As the pasuk says, Dichtiv Mirashit Hashana Ad Acharit Shana. So you see, you have Shana there, you have Shana over here. So we learn just like Shana by Mirashit Hashana Ad Acharit Shana of Yom Hadin is talking about Echad. But Tishrei, Shana of Orla and Netarvai also is talking about Echad B'Tishrei. The Gemara says, wait a second, I could find Shana that talks about Nisan. ולגמור שנה שנה מניסן, דכתיב ראשון הוא לכם לחודשי השנה. Right? We're talking about Rosh Chodesh Nisan, the pasuk says, ראשון הוא לכם לחודשי השנה. It's the beginning of the months of the year. Mara says, yes, but דנין שנה שאין עמה חודשים, we want shana alone. We want to know what's the beginning of the year. We want Shana. When you count the months of the year, that's a different count. That, we understand, starts from Nisan. But that's not your year, regular year. That has a different thing because we became Jews in Nisan. We became a nation in Nisan. We count the order of months from Nisan. But that's Chodshei Shana. That's not Shana. So we need a pasuk that talks about Shana without Chodshei Shana. So you can't learn from Chodshei Shana. So says the Gemara, ואין דנין שנה שאין עמה חודשים משנה שיש עמה חודשים. Fine. Now the Gemara is going to bring a braita, which is very interesting, and we need a little bit of a preface to understand the braita. There are several different ways of plantation. Obviously, you have the conventional plantation that you take a seed and you plant it in the ground. But some easier and safer ways of doing it is either grafting or propagation, which means mavrich is propagation. You take a soft branch, long soft branch, you bend it into ground, and you cover it with dirt, and you make sure it's moist well, and in the course of the weeks, it starts having its own roots, and at some point it becomes an individual, self-supported plant, and then you snip the connection to the old tree, and it becomes its own tree, right? That's mavrich. You take a branch and you create a new plantation from that. It's called propagation. And the other one is markiv, which is grafting, regular grafting. That's also another way of creating a new tree by grafting it. So says the Gemara, says the Braita, whether you are planting your mavrich, you are markiv, either of those, if it's Erev Shvi'it 30 Yom Lifnei Rosh Hashanah, if you are going into Shnat HaShemitah, and you are 30 days or more before Rosh Hashanah of the upcoming year being Shnat HaShemitah, then you did this, you planted this, or grafted it, however you did it. If it's more than 30 days before Rosh Hashanah, then Al Talo Shana, Your year has come up now. That means once you hit Rosh Hashanah, 1 year has passed for the years of Orla of this tree, right? So you planted it, let's say 35 days before Rosh Hashanah. Comes Rosh Hashanah, it's already second year of Orla, right? And also, mutar lekayemo b'shvi'it. It's mutar to keep this plantation in Shvit. Why is that? Because the Mishnah in Trumot, Perek Bet Mishnah Gimel says that if you plant something on Shvit, you have to uproot it on Shvit. If you plant something on Shvit, a tree on Shvit, it has to be uprooted. Now, we mentioned that there is a whole sugya, this whole daf tet was the sugya of Tosefet Shabbat, Tosefet Yom Kippurim, Tosefet Shvi'it, right? That was the whole diyun of daf tet. And we mentioned the Tosefet of Shvi'it is that going into Shvi'it and coming out of Shvi'it, you have addition, and therefore anything within 30 days that's planted before Shvi'it, we consider it as plantation of Shvi'it and has to be uprooted. If you planted it 30 or more days before Shvi'it, then you're good to go. So you have two things. It's considered planted last year, and therefore once it hits Rosh Hashanah, it's the second year of this plantation in regards to the 3 years of Orla that you can't use the fruits. And secondly, because it is considered the last year's plantation, you don't have to uproot it on Shvi'it. But if it's within 30 days, says the Braita, right? Pachot mishloshim yom, last line. Lifnei Rosh Hashanah, if it's within the 30 days, lo alta lo shana. When Rosh Hashanah hits, you have not passed 1 year. You still haven't passed a year of Orla until next Rosh Hashanah, right? So it's actually very interesting because you'll have a plant that is a full year and still not 1 year of Orla passed. Next Elul, it's been more than 12 months that this has been planted and still not yet 1 year of Orla until you hit the next Rosh Hashanah. So it'll be 13 or maybe 14 months for it to be, depending on if the year was a Shana Me'uberet, that this is going to hit its first thing and enter the second year of the years of Orla, right? It's going to become very relevant in just a moment. And also, Asur l'kaymo b'shvi'it. Also, if this was in Shvi'it, a year of Shvi'it, it's going to be now Asur to keep it on Shvi'it. You have to uproot the whole tree altogether. Fine. So says the Gemara, uperot netiazu, and this needs a little bit of your attention. Perot netiazu asurin atetvav bishvat. Right? I need you to pay attention to this. The fruits of this netiah is going to be asur until tetvav bishvat. What does that mean? It's very interesting. That means if I planted this 30 days before Rosh Hashanah, let's go through the timeline, okay? So I was a good boy. I did it 50 days, imagine, before Rosh Hashanah. I planted this, okay? So it hits Rosh Hashanah. Now we enter the second year, right? Comes next Rosh Hashanah, right? Now it is entering the third year. And it hits the next following Rosh Hashanah. My third year finished in entering fourth year. Can I take the fruits and eat it now? Why not? Or 3 years passed.
You have to revive.
Or we could eat Netarevai in Yerushalayim, right? No, I have a first class ticket, Elal, going to Yerushalayim, right? Can I eat it? Absolutely not. Why? Right? That's the topic over here. Now, it hasn't been 3 times 365, but my halachic years are up, right? I had 2 years and 50 days in my example that I gave, right? So why can't I eat it? Because once something is out of neti'ah, it's no longer a little branch, it becomes a tree. And once something becomes a tree, what is Rosh Hashanah le'ilanot? Tu B'Shvat. So I have to wait until Tu B'Shvat for the fruits not to be considered the fruits of the third year. Because it's not 3 years yet. Remember, I passed 3 halachic years. Really has been 2 years and 50 days. That's all I passed. It could be really as little as 2 years and 31 days. I haven't really hit, but I passed all the lines of halakha. I am in the 4th year now. But because this is no longer considered nitiyah as a tree, now I have to be careful that Rosh Hashanah le'ilanot has not passed, so therefore this is already fruits of the 3rd year still, not the 4th year. So I have to wait until Tu B'Shvat. What's the nafkamina? The nafkamina is, and pay attention a little bit, it's very simple. The nafkamina is, if I would have waited and not planted this until within the 30 days from Rosh Hashanah, right? So then, when the 1st year Rosh Hashanah comes, I haven't hit the 1st year yet, right? Because it was within 30 days of Rosh Hashanah. So when does it become my next year? Next Rosh Hashanah. Now this plant is 13 months old. And that's already entering the 2nd year, right? And the next Rosh Hashanah is going to be entering the 3rd year. When next Rosh Hashanah after that is going to be entering the 4th year, this plant is 3 full years and 1 month old. When halachically it becomes 4 years old, right? Then can I eat its fruits? Or do I have to wait until Tu B'Shvat? I can eat its fruits. Because 3 years has passed, right? And the fruits that I have over here are in all accounts, according to all counts, in the 4th year, and therefore I can have it. Right? So that's how it works when we talk about this. So let's read this together in the minute that we have. Uperot netiyazu, if I planted it 30 or more days before Rosh Hashanah, asurin, when the 4th year kicks in, halachic 4th year, which is really 2 years and 31 days plus. After the plantation, it's asur still to eat those until Tu B'Shvat of that year, because of what we explained, right? At Tu B'Shvat, im le'orla, orla, ve'im le'ravai, ravai. It's both for orla and for netarvai. That means this, in the 3rd year of it, which is 2 years and 1 month plus, after plantation, it's still considered orla until Tu B'Shvat, and the next following year, until Tu B'Shvat, it's going to be netaravai. That anything that grows, sprouts, and starts growing before Tu B'Shvat is going to be considered netaravai. You have to eat it in Eretz Yisrael. B'Kedusha, you can't just eat it where you are. So says the Gemara, how do I even know that? Because the pasuk says, "Ubashana harvi'it." Ubashana chamishit. I'll read you the pasuk. If you have the psukim on the side of your Gemara in Torah or Hashalem, take a quick look together with me, because these are 2 long psukim that we're going to read. When you come to Eretz Yisrael and you plant any etz ma'achal, ve'arartem orlato et piryo, right? You have to consider it orla, the fruits of it is going to be asur shalosh shanim yeh lachem arelim, lo yachel, for 3 years you cannot eat it. And the next pasuk says uba shana aravi'it, right? And instead of just saying bashana aravi'it, it says and in the 4th year yeh kol piryo kodesh ilulim, all of the fruits are going to be kadosh, like Maser Sheni. You can eat it, but you have to go to Yerushalayim. And the 3rd pasuk says, Ubashana again, Ubashana Chamishit, and in the 5th year, Tochlu et Pirei lo osif lachem tevuato, ani Hashem Elokechem. Says the Gemara, why do you need Vav and Vav? 2 attachments. You could just tell me, Bashana Arvit, Bashana Chamishit. Why do you tag along the 2nd pasuk to the 1st, and the 3rd pasuk to the 1st and the 2nd? Says the Gemara is coming to teach you a very simple but straightforward halacha. That uba shana revi'it, uba shana chamishit pamim sheberevi'it v'adayin asura mishum orla. Sometimes you find yourself in the 4th year and still is asur because of orla. You're in the halachic 4th year, as we discussed before, because 2 years have passed, 2 years and 1 month, right? And you find yourself already in the beginning of the 4th year, but really the fruits are still going to be orla until Tu B'Shvat, right? That's how you see it. That the dynamic between the Orla and Rosh Hashanah Ilanot, it has it in a way that if you haven't passed 3 full years, then you have to wait for Rosh Hashanah Ilanot. Because that's the Rosh Hashanah for trees. And any fruit before Rosh Hashanah Ilanot is attributed to the year before. So I don't care if you have past the lines of years for Orla, you still are bound by lines for fruits of the trees, which is on Tu B'Shvat. But if you pass the 3 full years, then obviously you're no longer in the restrictions of Orla. So sometimes you're in the 4th year, halachic 4th year, but you really, the Gabei Orla is still in the 3rd year. And sometimes you're halachically in the 5th year, but really you are still bound to Neta Revai for the 4th year's produce. Pamim shebechamishit, you're in halachic 5th year, v'adayin asura mishum Revai. That's the setup of the Gemara, and now the Gemara is going to challenge this with the Shita of Rabbi Meir, that Rabbi Meir held 1 day during the year could be considered the whole year. Why do you need a whole month over here, right? Beforehand, the Gemara is going to go through a fascinating back and forth, which Bezrat Hashem will continue in the next shiur.